What does March Madness have to do with business success? That's our conversation today on the podcast. Let's jump in. BJ O'Neill here with the Business Coaching Success Podcast. So glad you're here, where I share with you strategies, tools, and tips to be able to grow your business coaching practice to six figures and beyond as a Christian business coach. Let's jump in. Well, welcome. Glad that you are here. It's an honor that you would to join me here on Business Coaching Success, where we discuss all things that are needed and necessary for creating a successful and profitable business coaching practice as a Christian professional. And it is the season that lots of people like, not everybody, but a lot of people do. I certainly do. March Madness. And lots of people have brackets. Lots of people watch. I know I have. We're in the middle of it right now. If you're listening live, meaning within the next few weeks or a couple of weeks, we're still in the March Madness season. And you know, I kind of take a look at a lot of things personally to say, is there any correlation between, you know, in this case, this type of sport and the type of sport that we're playing in terms of a tournament? Where are some parallels to growth and success? And just a few things that I think that can shape the way that you're thinking potentially, that can, you know, again, give you some aha moments yourself and certainly add value to you. At least that's what my hope is. Before we do that, if you are taking a peek at our business coaching team and our resources and our systems and our tools, we call the focused method. If you're thinking about it, you're in our on our list. You've watched some videos, you've seen some emails, you're considering it. How your background in this next season or this current season that you're looking at, how business coaching can be a thing, but you just don't have the structure and system. You're curious about what we do. You can go to businesscoachmastery.com. That's businesscoachmastery.com. Click on a link, book and explore the systems call. If you saw this or got this episode through an email, there's probably a link in that as well. If you're on our coaching team, man, this is the stuff that when we use the term thought leader, I would encourage you to even, you know, utilize content like this to even help with your prospects and your clients as well, and just framing conversations. That's just my perspective, of course. You can do you the way you want to do it, but I do believe that part of our purpose and plan is in giving you content that you can utilize. And certainly today's episode, I believe, has a way to do that in its own way, which I think will make sense, okay? And so just a few things to consider, to think about as it pertains to March Madness and growth. Certainly not only for building a successful, profitable business coaching practice, but also for business owners building successful businesses. The first, and this is the fun one, the best team on paper doesn't always win, and oftentimes they don't. And I'm not even just referring to the whole tournament. And I'm going to make an assumption that you understand March Madness and what it is. If you don't, you can Google it and look it up for speed, so that I can stick to the main points. But it's a college basketball tournament at its finest. It is, you know, sudden death. You are going to play one game, and if you lose, you're done. You're out. Dunzo, as they like to say. But every single year, top teams get outperformed and beat. Just recently, which I hate because I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a Tennessee Vols fan, but I love the SEC. That's just, again, you may not. That's awesome. You may have your own favorite, which is great. That's what makes competition fun. And but in the last couple of days, Florida, who was the number one seed, was knocked off and lost by 1 point. That's a tough loss, right? But what's the point? In business and in coaching, credentials and experience doesn't always guarantee success. Meaning, I see it all the time, and I've trained now hundreds upon hundreds on hundreds of coaches over the years. And many of them believe that they need to get that certification, that plaque on the wall or whatever. Can those things aid and help? Sure, they can in the right context and when you use it correctly, but by themselves, they honestly don't really offer that much value. They really don't. And so you don't want to think that a couple of things. One, if you're aspiring to start a business coaching practice, stop thinking that you need them before you start. That's step one. The next, if you are currently coaching, you've got several clients, and you've got this mindset around, if I also had that additional, cert, for the wall, if you will, that's going to help me get the next. That's just not the case. Now, let me be very clear. Certainly, if you're going to specialize in an area like in certain types of accounting or whatever, they can help, but they are not by themselves the reason that you're ever going to be successful. Period. Okay. Lining yourself up and putting your shoulders next to big names, also not going to be the reason. So the point is that your credentials and experience by themselves, you may own a business, and that business may have been successful. That's clearly, that experience is going to be extremely helpful, but it's not about the most experienced and talented. It's the most prepared and most disciplined in execution. That's what's going to bring about success. And I've watched it over and over and over, and I can't remember if it's published. I could look. We have a older gentleman in his 80s, been with us for almost a year. And if we're being honest, we were like, man, we'll see how this goes. It's not normal. I shouldn't say normal. It's not the majority, but how he's young at heart and just wasn't ready to just not be active. And 10 months into his journey, he has 11 clients. Think about that, right? 11 clients. So what's the point? The team that wins isn't the most talented. We see it all the time in the tournament. You get a team that's shorter, less experienced coaching even, and sometimes they beat the big guys. Happens all the time. Number two, you cannot win the tournament in the first round, even if you wanted to, right? They're playing with what's right in front of them in the moment, right? And so what the purpose here, the point is, if that team, we hear this all the time in the interviews and both before a game and after a game, certainly especially with the panel, those that are on the broadcast that talk about the statistics and all the ins and outs and whatnot. And we hear all the time where the concern is teams that are looking 2 to 3 games down the road. So if the tournament's starting, team of 64, and they already are thinking about the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. In other words, when there's 16 or 8 teams left, there's risk in that because they're not focused. If they're not careful, they're not focused with what's going on. Now, yes, we have to make plans. Yes, forecasting is real, but you can't build the whole thing, the perfect website, the perfect offer, the perfect funnel. Some of that stuff you have to kind of do with it what you have in the moment. Done is better than perfect. And so those who, I see it all the time. You have new coaches that they don't really get started because they're trying to get everything, amazing as if they already had 12 clients. And it's just not going to work that way. Number one, you're going to learn a lot. Your experiences and working with coaches and the way that you're going to do it peer-to-peer. Like if you're in our team and you're in this season where you've got 1 or 2 clients, you're 3 or 4 months in, what it's going to look like in a year from now from working with our team, with one another, peer-to-peer, things are going to shift because of just, experience. And so you can't win it in the first round. You can't start the business coaching practice, or even if it started off the ground, you can't operate it as if you have 12 to 15 clients, because you don't. And you can't let that to prevent you from getting out there, being disciplined and to execute what's needed to get that next client or build relationship with the clients that you already have. Third, every Cinderella has a system. Okay. If I could go back and change one big thing 20 years ago, And I'm a creative, free spirit at heart. And so systems and processes were not, and still are not, well, they are now, I guess, natural, but they're not a natural wiring to my personal personality and gift mix. Okay. I actually looked, early on as a young entrepreneur in my 20s, I looked at systems and processes as being a straitjacket. And to be fair, we didn't have technology then. There was no, crazy to say this, the internet wasn't really a thing. So there was no smartphones, apps, tools like that. And so, but systems and structures and processes just looked arduous to me. They looked complicated. They looked like they were in the way. Boy, that could be nothing more than, that's a false narrative. If that's you, if you have the same idea that I do, that winging it's going to give, you're not. And so when you look at March Madness and you see these teams that are no-name teams, by no-name means they just don't, they've either never have or have rarely been in the tournament. So you may not be familiar with who they are. They're not the big teams that are there every single year, especially the ones that typically make it to the Sweet 16. And you can look at that sometimes and go, wow, they just kind of tripped into luck. No, that team also had a system. You may not know who they are. They may not be as big as the other guys that are there almost every year. They may not have the names and the accolades and prior championships and all that stuff. But I can promise you that they still have a system. They still have a structure. They have practiced. They have rehearsed. That they're going into those games with a game plan. So it can look like that they just kind of got lucky or whatever. That's not true. And there's certainly, I think we can all make the argument that there are times where things just go our way, and there are times that things just don't go our way. That happened to Florida this year. Things did not go their way, unfortunately. But they, if there could have been 30 more seconds on the, who knows what would happen, right? We could always say that, but when you lose by 1 point, it is what it is. And so certainly some of those Cinderella teams, things may have just gone their way, but what went their way is that the execution of the plan was good enough that they were able to win, and oftentimes we see this where Cinderella makes it to the Final Four. And so don't believe that you can just trip into success, or you can kind of get lucky, or, just wing it. It's just simply not going to happen. Last, this is the big one. This is the big one. You have to be in the tournament to win it. You have to be in the tournament to win it. You're not going to be successful if you're not in the game. You're not going to be successful if you're not playing the game. Okay? The brackets, that we do, that we're not, we're on the sidelines, right? We're filling out the bracket, but we're not actually playing the game. But I've seen it happen all the time, where aspiring coaches are constantly, in quotations, filling out their bracket. When I get it ready, then I'll pick up the phone. When I get polished, then I'll go to that networking event. When I feel more this, that, or the other, then I might do an in-person or a virtual workshop. But nobody has ever cut down the net from their couch. You likely have seen that where, they win the championship, they cut the nets down. You're not going to be able to ever feel successful or to have what you potentially aspire to have and you've dreamed to have and you've been, really thinking about for a long time, if you're constantly behind the screens of your computer at your desk all the time and you're not developing relationships, you're not adding value, and you're not active at some level. And that word active is going to be very different for everyone. Certainly, I'll just use it as a blanket statement. You got to have activity in your local market for you to become known. That's how, one of the ways that you improve your prominence. People need to see you in a certain light, and that can't happen if you're quiet, if you're not active, if you're not making connections, the coffees, the lunches, the phone calls, the emails, the direct messages, they all matter. And everybody's at a different slant on how to do it. There's not one way, really, honestly. I do get the question, hey, which way is the best way to? There's not one. I guess you could say that there is in the context of there would be in the context of your personality. For instance, if you just don't like being in front of a group of people teaching and leading, then doing a workshop style probably wouldn't be your ballgame. If you love to talk and you enjoy the company of other people, then being a part of business functions and networking activity probably your game. If you're a high S and you're more of a in the background, that may not be your lane. So that's the kind of stuff, by the way, in our focus method system that we work with you on one-on-one to just work through what likely could be the best fit for you. And there's always rule breakers and outliers, of course. I love it when I see people who say that they typically don't like to talk a lot to bunch, but then they'll kind of crush it in a networking room or whatever. And so, but by and large, there are those that fit. But here's the bigger point: is that you simply aren't going to win ever if your activity's low, if your conversations are quiet, and if you're just trying to I'll do it when I get there, because you're likely just avoiding something for some reason. There's a lot of reasons why that could be going on. You need to figure that out. But avoidance to launch is never a plan for success. So there you go. Just again, it's I may not be telling you anything that you don't know, but what are you going to do with it? And I do hope and pray that it's added value. One, perhaps something it's sparked in you. If you're on our coaching team, if you're started the journey, but you've just kind of been waiting for some reason, it's time to go. If you are considering at some point, prayerfully, something that I've said has just caused some, a kind of that light bulb moment, that aha moment to kind of go, wait a minute. I haven't really thought about that. And I will say, when I say the terms done's better than perfect, I'm not suggesting that be unprofessional. Because you got to have a system and a structure and all that. Yes. But you just can't keep, painting it and painting it and painting it. Because, 1 week turns into 1 month, turns into 6 months, turns into a year. And we see it a lot. Maybe not a lot. We see it often enough. Too often, actually. Where someone just continues to refine, and they just don't get out there. You're far better to develop relationships and activity and get bruised and scabbed a little bit, because you're going to learn a lot faster. You're going to have clients a lot quicker. Even if it feels clunky, so what? You'll get there. And that's the reason we see it all the time in sports. Those that are out there on the field and on the court who are, making it work despite being perfect are the ones that put themselves in a position to actually get it done. There you go. I hope this has added value today. Until next time, take care.